Yes, welcome along to the Monday Club. You'll have noticed Russell has decided to go into hiding. I think that performance yesterday has taken it all out of him, and that dissection with Terry means he's needed a wee night off. So I'm stepping in and hosting, but I'm not alone this evening. As you'll see, I've got two wonderful gentlemen who have decided to join me. I've got Connor Carr, who is on my right. Connor, how are you doing?
Fucking raging. I'm absolutely fuming. I'm so angry, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get plenty of time to vent this evening. I feel like that's probably going to be the general theme. I've also got Johnny Logue with me. Good to be on with you again, Johnny. It's been a long time since we've done one of these together. Wish it was in better circumstances, but how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing all right. The football's not so good, obviously, same as everybody else, and it has been a long time since me and you have been on the screen together, John. So yeah, I can't even remember when it was for fair, but yeah, looking forward to it. I think it might be a bit noisy, shall we say?
Yeah, I think we can expect to have the hard hats on tonight. I expect it might get a little bit rowdy as we go along with this. But before we get into all of the continued dissection of what went wrong at the weekend, and obviously a look ahead to the game against Feyenoord on Wednesday night, we'll just go over a bit of the housekeeping. So if you like what you see on the channel, do give us a wee like. It does help the algorithms there. Do give us a wee share if you can. You can slag my hair. Neither of these two have any, so that would be a bit unfair to go after them. Although Connor, you do seem to be rocking the beard at the minute. So if people want to have a pop at that, then feel free. You can subscribe to the channel, and we've also got the Pie Sports discount that is still running with the code 1888, which gets you a nice tasty discount off at the store there as well. But let's get right into it, lads. Obviously, Russell and Terry did kind of go through a lot yesterday after the game. It very much was a game of two halves for me, Connor. I thought Celtic in the first half probably should have had the game won. Now, granted, there was opportunities for Kilmarnock. There was warning signs in the first half from a defensive standpoint that this might not be as straightforward as 3 points as we were perhaps hoping for going in. But based on the first half performance, how big of a drop off in the standards do you see? What do you think went wrong at half time there for a team that were creating chances, could have scored, 3 or 4 in that first half? Where did it all go wrong at half time?
I think they've just ran out of ideas. I think the what we're being left with is just not up to the standard that we need to win these games, and the fact that we're saying that against Scottish opposition, against a Derek McInnes side, against Kilmarnock who play on a plastic pitch, is just disgraceful. I think the performance was so bad. I think if you're wanting to know about my swearing, I'd maybe actually be able to afford a couple of decent fucking signings where I'm at the swearing I'll be doing the night for Celtic, because it's really not worth it anymore. It's eating away at me week in, week out. We've been getting the wins, aye, but the performances have been so bad that it's been leading up to this, and we've got a hell of a wake up call, but it's been on the books for I don't know how long. Honestly, I think we've had more bad performances this season than good. I think we've had maybe two good performances. One against Aberdeen, one against Hibs, and three, and one against Rangers if you want to count that one, even though we've got to be a 1-0 win. I'm just thoroughly infuriated with this team, from top to bottom, right away from the board to the manager to the players that are still on that fucking pitch. It's not good enough anymore. The fact that in the first half that we had it in ourselves to have that game dead and buried, the fact we've got a fucking headless chicken little up the top, missing 3 absolute sitters. I mean, that's his only job, is to put the ball in the back of the net, and he can't do it from point blank range. It's really, really disgusting and infuriating. I'm getting lost for words with how bad it was. I mean, I didn't even think the first half was that good. We were lucky not to go into that 2-1 down. Genuinely, we're lucky that one of their shots came in off the post and then came back out and we got rid of it. It's not up to snuff anymore. It's done. I'm done with this until we get some serious changes. This is just it's no good for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're probably echoing what a lot of people will be saying in the comments. David Kelly makes a good point. That was exactly what I thought as well. It was shades of COVID Celtic. I felt, Johnny, watching particularly the second half of that game. They were so bereft of ideas. They didn't seem to have any answers to Kilmarnock's press. Kilmarnock got a bit more physical, a bit more in our faces, and the players just seemed to crumble very easily under that bit of pressure that they got put under by the Killie players. And in the end, I think you'd even been saying in the chat you could see it coming when it went to 1 each that we were going to end up losing that game. And that's pretty damning in of itself when you're looking at a match, and especially in the league where Celtic are in a position where they've got the lead, they end up completely falling to one side in the second half and completely falling on their arse. And when it gets to 1 each, you're expecting a bit of a reaction from the team. And I thought when it went to 1 each, right, maybe that'll give us a kick up the arse to actually start playing again like we were in the first half. But it never really seemed to happen, Johnny. And is there question marks now over the mentality of some of these players? Do they actually have the stomach for a title fight?
Oh, there's massive question marks over them. And the answer to the question is they haven't got a stomach for the fight. I think we've been saying on here a few times, are we hard enough? Have we got that guy in the team that can, when things are going like they were yesterday, can pull on the boots and sort it out? And the answer, glaringly, yesterday was no. And it almost started from as soon as we scored. I mean, Killie came into the game after we scored. I mean, they looked a bit dangerous a couple of times. It hit the post 59 seconds before we put the ball in the net to make it 1-0. And from then on to the end of this first half, I thought they looked just as dangerous then as they did in the second half. They were just never at it. But for whatever reason, they never came out. They let Killie bully them and push them all around the park. I mean, when we seen the team lineup coming through, and I looked at it and I thought, where are we going with that? And then I thought, well, that must be the fourth time this year we've looked at a team lineup and thought, we're going to get humped. And then at half-time, 1-0, you think, well, that's maybe why Brendan's the manager and I'm sitting at home watching the game on the telly. But we've seen what happened in the second half. It just was never going to happen. In fact, I think, Connor, you put a message on saying that, they're going to equalise. And I said, yeah, and if they do, they'll go on and win as well. It was absolutely no surprise that A, they equalised, and B, they went on and got the winner. And we had absolutely no answer to them whatsoever.
No, definitely. I definitely thought it was going to go that way as well. Once it got to 1 each, you could feel the writing on the wall. And you shouldn't be in that sort of position. As a Celtic player, you should be able to kind of roll with the punches a bit more, Connor. And it did seem as if the players didn't know how to react to that bit of pressure they get put under the second half. And the performance levels from the players was inexcusable. And if you ask me, particularly with that second half showing it's nowhere near the levels that we would expect of Celtic. If you're going to lose a game, there's ways to lose, and that was absolutely not one of them. But I mean, when you're talking about, the players' performances, I think we do have to touch upon the other element of this, and that is the manager. I think he has, escaped a lot of criticism so far this season. I think we all know that he's got a good reputation, and that has probably helped him. He's got credit in the bank from his first spell at the club, which has certainly helped him this time around, because I feel if we'd gone down, an Enzo Maresca route, for example, and he was producing similar levels of performances and then getting these types of results, the drums would be beginning to be beating a lot harder for him to be removed from his position. I think the fans' patience is now being tested a bit, and I think we do have to look at the manager for what went wrong as well yesterday. And I think he's just as culpable, if not more so, than the players for that level of performance, because we've seen these types of performances happen a few times this season. It's probably arguably happened more often than it hasn't in the league that we've put in dodgy performances like this. And this was a matter of time coming. Yesterday was the day it finally blew up in our face. But I think we've been able to see something like this happening for a long, long time. And Brendan hasn't been able to find a way to get the best out of the players that he has, because, okay, we know that there's probably going to need to be massive improvements in January, and we'll definitely be holding the board accountable for that with how the window went in the summer. But, Brendan's still got those players there. This is still a team of players that should be good enough to put in performances at SPL level without, getting completely bullied by a Kilmarnock team managed by Derek McInnes. And it just didn't seem to me, Connor, as if Brendan Rodgers had any real tactical answers to what Kilmarnock were throwing his way in the second half. And I don't know if you think it's stubbornness on his part because he's thinking, these aren't my players. I don't really want to be having to deal with them. They just can't play my system. Or is there a bit of complacency also creeping in from the manager because he's won it all before, that he finds this a bit too easy and hasn't, necessarily been making the sort of changes that he perhaps would have done the first time around?
Aye, I'm at the point now where I'm really starting to question the manager because his football this season has been nothing short of dire. We've had a couple of good performances against stinking teams, and that's it. There's nothing really to write home about. Like, Neil Lennon could arguably get a 6-0 win over Aberdeen or a 4-1 win over Hibs, or Ronnie Dyler or anybody picking about a hat. They could more than likely do that with a Celtic team with the players there if they're given the opportunity. It's not, something to write home about. The thing you need to do as a manager is win consistently and win with a decent style of play and win well and have good performances. That's not been happening this season consecutively in enough times. It's you look at the difference between last season, this exact same Kilmarnock team pretty much, and we were drubbing them. We were 4-0 up in the first half. We were absolutely hammering them. Every single team that's got a result against us this season does the exact same thing. They just camp in their box. They keep maybe one player up on the halfway line. Everybody else is behind the ball. They just crowd it out because they know what we're going to try and do is just pass it in the box and just try and tap it in the back of the goal. And there's nothing there. We don't have players like Jota anymore who can skin 3, 4, 5 players and put in a brilliant ball or take a shot from 20 yards outside the box and score a screamer. We don't have that anymore. We don't have a manager whose plan and style of play is that good that he's only got the one plan. It works so well that it doesn't, it can't be handled by anybody. Everybody in their maw could probably set up a team against this Celtic side and maybe get a result because it's that poor, it's that bad. It's the poorest I've seen it in a long time. The difference is now is even in Andy's first season when we were trailing behind Rangers in the league, I still had belief in the team. I still had belief in the system. I still had belief in the manager that we could turn it around, get results, and push Rangers for the title. I don't have that belief anymore, even though we're 5 points ahead now. I don't have that belief anymore.
The game in hand,
I know
5 points. Could go to 2. Yeah, it could go to 2.
Or they could beat us, in this derby. There's a possibility, and you would never think to say that with how bad they've been, but it's a possibility, and that should scare the life out of everybody. That a Rangers team that is shite as that could possibly win the league, and it's really on the board's head and it's on the manager's head as well. It's really, I don't know what we can do. Genuinely, people will say that he wasn't backed. He signed off on the players to come in. He signed off on Nat Phillips to come into this football club. He wanted him. He's a connection from his old days at Liverpool. He signed off on that. He wanted him. That's exactly what he was angling towards when we had Carter Vickers out for the game against Rangers, and he wanted to bring in an experienced player in that position, and he chose Nat Phillips. And before that game kicked off, we all thought, put in Nat Phillips ahead of Scales. Scales come in, he's played really well, fair enough. And now he's played now, we see what he's like. Holy fuck. What's it going to be like in January? If he's in charge of the transfers as well, and even if he's given some money, who's he going to bring in? What are we going to be given in January to try and seal this league title up? Because I don't have any faith in it anymore. And people can say, you're being a bedwetter. It's one bad result. It's one loss all season. That's not the point. The point is we've seen that the writings were on the wall since the first whistle was blown this season. Genuinely, it has, and we were all buzzing that Brendan was back. That we were blinded for it for a couple of months, and now it's gone. The facade is there no more. It's laid bare for us all to see. This is not good enough. This is not good enough for the manager, for the board, for the players. We need more, and he can come out with all the speeches he wants about that was the angriest I've ever been at half time and all that, and stick a rocket up the players' arses. But then to go out and put a performance like that against fucking Kilmarnock, it's not acceptable. It's disgusting. That should be like, if that was any of us did something like that in one of our day-to-day lives and our jobs, you'd be seriously reprimanded. Then the same should be done to Brendan. And I'm not saying he should fucking get it done to him, but he needs to give his head a wobble. I have no idea where we go from here. It's going to take a serious amount of investment, which we know won't happen, because I'll go into a rant about the board and that later on tonight, in terms of talking about the upcoming European fixture as well, because I would suggest that nobody fucking shouldn't or even go to it, but I'll get onto that later. It's not going anywhere good in my mind. And look, I'm maybe getting way ahead of myself here. It wouldn't be like me, obviously. You know what I'm like, but I'm just so done. That it's just sucking the joy out of me every week watching this. We've had a couple of good games, and even then it's because the opposition have been absolutely hoaching. It's not that we've done anything that massively different. I really don't see where the changes are going to come in the next couple of weeks, because it's the same team, it's the same players, it's the same manager. He's not going to magically change his tactics in the next couple of days to all of a sudden get these players to be playing amazing football and we're going to be absolutely hammering teams. I'm just sick of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've raised a few points there, Connor, that are worth looking at. Marc Cairney's also coming in with the points, about potential for, empty stadiums and Sharks out again if, the board don't get the checkbook out, Johnny, to match Brendan's ambition for what he was wanting to do this time around at the club, because needless to say, it's been a bit of a disaster for him thus far. An interesting point that Connor does make there, though, is the similarities in some ways to Ange's first season, because in Ange's first season, you could see Celtic were building something but weren't necessarily getting the results in the early stages under Postecoglou, if you think back to it. But people were on side because they could see what he was trying to do. This season, it's almost felt a bit in reverse with what we've seen so far, in the sense that the results are actually there for the most part until this weekend. We've kind of got away with it. But the performance levels have been declining, and there's been a few decent ones in there, but on the whole, they haven't been anywhere near the levels that we've been used to over the past couple of years. And that one, again, has to really lie with the manager, for me, as to finding a way that is going to work best for the team. And what it seems to me at the moment is he's got this way of playing. It does seem as if a lot of managers have gotten wise to it. Derek McInnes has played against Brendan so many times now over both spells that even McInnes is beginning to clock how best to play against the Brendan Rodgers setup. Now he's had 2 victories over us this season, not 1 but 2. Kilmarnock in general have had Brendan's number. If you go over both spells, I think they've won 4 out of 10 games, I think I read, against Celtic. So they're without doubt the team in Scotland, I would imagine, that Brendan has the worst record against. So there's a lot of elements going into a game like this on Sunday that the manager had to be aware of in terms of pitfalls. And it seems as if he just walked straight into them aimlessly and didn't seem to have a plan B. And that's, very unlike Brendan Rodgers from the first time around. And the first time around, we'd always have another option, and they always have, be thinking one step ahead for any situation playing out and be ready to make the changes, whatever it be, to actually get the result. And I'm just wondering, is he now too wedded to this system that brought him so much success the first time around? Because I'm going to point to one player that I think is really not getting the best out of it, and that's Kyogo. And that's why Kyogo, I think, has been dropped, is because he's not been able to get the best out of Kyogo. Kyogo likes to run in behind, play those defence-splitting passes through to him. And with the way Celtic go about their business now, the opportunities for them aren't really there as much because the game is built up a lot slower, which gives the defenders more time to get into positions and cut out the space for Kyogo to actually run into. Whereas with Postecoglou, it was a lot quicker and there was a bit more space there, and it was a bit more instinctive, I think, from some of the players as well, compared to the more methodical approach that Brendan has taken this time around. How much is the playing style impacting the squad? Because we obviously know January's coming, and we know that when we get to January, that's when everyone is going to be appealing en masse for the board to do their bit and help the team. But between now and then, there's still going to be a few games to play, including a derby. There's some crucial fixtures in here where we can't afford to be dropping points like we did on Sunday now with the position we find ourselves in. How, Johnny, does Brendan Rodgers go about getting the best out of this team over the next few weeks?
$64 million question, John. I've got, to be honest, we got no idea. He's got to change some of the players. Taylor, I've tried to defend Taylor last season and when he had a decent spell on that, but it's getting beyond a joke now. I was wondering yesterday when he took Taylor off against, was it St Johnstone he took Taylor off against, put Ralston on at fullback, at left back?
Hibs.
No, it's Hibs. It was
Hibs. Right, against Hibs.
It was a better fucking left back than Taylor as well.
Yeah, it's just what I was going to say. And so I didn't see the point of doing that and then putting Taylor back in again yesterday. So why did he keep?
It's because it was his 150th appearance.
Or even just bringing on Ralston, well, that really shouldn't have come into it. And I'd like to think Brendan's a better manager that gives somebody a game just because it's got some sentimental value to it. But even during the game, when it was quite obvious we were needing somebody who's got a bit of a dig, a bit of spirit about them, a bit of fight about them, you got Ralston sitting on the bench. You could have brought him on and really pretty much put him anywhere across the back four, whether right back, left back, or played him in centre of defence. Particularly the way Nat Phillips was playing would have been as well with Nat King Cole as Nat Phillips. But you've got to get the excitement back. It's got to get you've got to lift the levels of the speed up. It's just so boring to watch. And don't get me wrong, I was a big advocate for getting Brendan back. As soon as Ange walked out the door, I said, my first pick is Ange. It's Brendan. Second pick, Brendan. Third pick, Brendan. But I wanted the real Brendan. I didn't want this parody that we've got at the minute. It's mind-numbing. You're watching the game and you start drifting off and you pick your phone up and you look at Facebook or you stick something else on YouTube to have on the background. It's not holding your attention. And if it is, it's because you're busy ranting, raving at the television because how shit it's been. Absolutely no entertainment value for it. And I'm just glad I'm not paying any money to watch it. And I feel sorry for all the guys that do, that turn up every week, home and away, spending good money to watch that drivel. And O's another one. I think we could take him out. We've tried. Terry spoke about it yesterday on the BMP. I was listening to it this afternoon, and we sort of flipped between, he's maybe starting to show something. Then the next game he doesn't. Somebody asked a question on the comments earlier on, how did O miss that ball that Johnson put in? Now, I've not seen enough of O to know, but is his left foot purely for standing on? Because that's why he missed it. He tried to go with his right foot, didn't even get to it. But if he'd gone with his left foot, he'd have got into that ball, and all it had to do was hit him. But he was so determined to go with his right foot. Now, somebody can tell me whether one way or the other. But is he so predominantly right-footed? I've never really picked up on it, to be fair, because he's not played enough football. But I don't know how much more football he should be getting, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant point. It's not really something I've considered, but yeah, he should be taking that with his other foot, and it's a brilliant one to bring up there. And I think when you're looking at it's quite clear that Brendan hasn't really fancied him at all. The fact Kyogo's form has fallen off a cliff pretty much says it all for how things are going at the moment, that he's now decided to actually turn towards who couldn't get a look in at the start of the season and, didn't get much of a look in, even last season when he came in the door because he just looks like he's not going to cut it to me at all, Connor. And there does seem to be a big problem with what's happened in terms of the players that have been brought in. And I think, you still have to go back and you still have to say, Rodgers, not on all, but and certainly the other ones that came in the summer, he's had his opportunity to have a look at these players. And, okay, fair enough, the club's probably done most of the scouting on a lot of these guys before Brendan's came in, and they've put them to him, and he's maybe rubber stamped them. And we can go back around the summer window as much as we like, because that's probably one of the main reasons we are where we are at the moment. If you're starting games, and I feel like he gets a dig all the time, Mikey Johnson, but if we were to be told 12 months ago that your wingers, next year are going to be bloody between Mikey Johnson and James Forrest for a start for Celtic, because that's where we were yesterday. It was really, it was only ever going to be one of the two of them, because he doesn't fancy Yang, and I can't blame him for that, because he looks an absolute dud as well. And then there has to be serious questions asked as to where Celtic have actually went wrong over the past 12 months, because the squad has regressed massively. This is probably the biggest regression in a Celtic team over a 12-month period I can remember seeing in a long, long time. To go from where we were, winning a treble last season, to where we are now, where we're, scraping, already out the League Cup, Europe, again, disastrous in terms of results. And, we now find ourselves very much in a title race, after being 7 points clear earlier on in the season and looking like we were going to, run away with it at a canter in the early stages. And we've now got a very mediocre Rangers team that are right on our tails. And I think a lot of that has to go down to the quality of the players there. But having said that as well, when you look at these players, Connor, there is an argument to be made that Brendan Rodgers is a development manager. That's what he was brought in to do. That's what he did very well the first time around. He brought players on like your Tierney's, your McGregors, Armstrong, Christie's. He did bring a lot of that's just homegrown players that he brought on and turned them into far better players. My concern is, looking at it this season, as I think we were all excited to see how he would develop the players that we had. But I can only think of two that he's actually managed that with. And that's Liam Scales being the obvious one, and Matt O'Reilly, who's been our player of the season by a country mile this year. Outside of that, I'm struggling, Connor, to see what he's been able to do with the development of the players that he has, because for me, most of the rest of them have either stayed still, or in the case of some, have even regressed. And how do we go about actually fixing that? Because this is something that is in Brendan's control. The transfer window's been and gone. He can't control that anymore until it reopens in January. But he can control what he does with the players that he has at his disposal over the next couple of weeks to try and get the best out of them, which I don't think he is getting anywhere close to the best out of some of these players, because most of these players are winners. Most of them were here last season and did win trophies. So they know how to get the job done. They just don't seem to be playing particularly well under the system or Brendan Rodgers' coaching methods. I don't know what it is, but how does Brendan get himself back, Connor, to a situation where he actually can elevate the players, much like he did the first time around? Is it a case he's given up, do you think, on the ones that are there, or is it a case that the players just don't want to listen to him?
I couldn't answer that question. If I did, it'd be a lot easier for us to figure out exactly what the fuck's going on. But in terms of developing players, I genuinely think that he's just got lucky with Liam Scales. I think Matt O'Reilly's been that quality of player already. I know he was kind of hot and cold last season, but the season before, when he came into January, he was lighting up then as well under Postecoglou. And as far as I'm concerned, every single player in that team, bar those two, have regressed massively since he's came in. And it's not me being, taking the mick or going too far. That's a genuine truth. They've all gone backwards. Taylor, who we were all shouting about last season as maybe getting player of the season, he just went back so far. He's back to his old ways, what he was under Lennon. Not good enough. maybe that just looks like a bit of a flash in the pan that season as well. And, you know, Joe Hart, shocking this season. Kyogo can't score. He's not scored in about 8 or 9 games. That's ridiculous. He was the top scorer last season, got about 30 odd goals. He's not even hit 10 yet, and we're 23 games into the season. I have no answers. I have only more questions, and I feel like that's happening every week in, week out. As I don't know where we're going here, and you know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see it getting any better unless this charlatan board do the unthinkable and actually back the manager. Now, why you would drop the best striker in the league 2 games in a row is beyond me. Why you would only bring him on for about 40 minutes of football combined over the 2 games is beyond me. I understand he's not scoring. I understand he's been, going through a bit of a rough patch. But at the end of the day, he's miles better than anything else we can put up front there as a striker. And that's just pure management. Kyogo will have seen that and he's like, we've lost the game and I hardly got any minutes. He'll have seen those chances that will got put on a fucking silver platter for him and be like, I would have scored those. Easy. If it was Kyogo in that position, we would have been 3-0 up at half time, possibly 4. Because you know what he's like, he's tenacious, he goes for it. He can do things, that you wouldn't really normally see. He can link up the play, he can do all sorts of things. It boggles my mind. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. We're not having a consistent team week in, week out. 1 week it's O up top, then it's Kyogo. 1 week it's Palma on the wing with Yang. 1 week it's Palma with Mikey Johnston. 1 week it's James Forrest and Palma. 1 week it's McGregor, Home, and O'Reilly. Then it's McGregor, O'Reilly, and Iwata. Then it's Turnbull. There's no consistency. There's no chance to build and to get players into decent form because they don't have a consistent run of games. And yeah, when they have been given chances, they've been pretty poor. But what more can we do? You can't just keep chopping and changing the team every week and just expect it to magically work. You need to work with what you've got. And if he's the development manager, if players aren't having good spells, if they're not doing things well, he should be identifying that. He should be changing that and helping them improve. I mean, the fact that Harry Kewell, who came in under Ange, has been getting props from lots of different players we've seen since he's came in. Players like Maeda, Matt O'Reilly, I think Anthony Ralston was maybe one of them. He's been getting props from them. He's getting like with the Yokohama F. Manos job. He could fuck off. And then we're left with what? John Kennedy and Gavin Stratton. John Kennedy was a defender, yet he can't set up a team to defend a fucking corner to save their lives. It doesn't make sense to me. The coaching staff are not up to snuff. Ange never got to bring in his own backroom team. Luckily, it was fine with that, and he worked fucking miracles with him. Brendan's not got any of his backroom team in again, and we're still dealing with the same thing. The same rot that's been in this club for years is still there. I think we're just getting lucky now that we've not really lost much in terms of our success and where we're going in league titles and all the rest of it. But it's going to catch up with us eventually if we keep going down this same route, allowing these, charlatans and, all this nepotism to seep into the bones of the club. We've not just got the chairman's son, we've got the owner's fucking son as well. We've got 2 Desmonds and 2 Lawwells. That's fucking mental. That's mental.
I think there's definitely a lot of issues with the club, going right up to boardroom level. And it's interesting you touch upon Harry Kewell because it does look like he is going to be off Johnny, as well, which will then leave a vacancy in terms of coaching staff, which might present an opportunity for Brendan to bring one in of his own. However, I suspect there was a chap that was in attendance at Rugby Park called Scott Brown, who I wouldn't necessarily rule out being the guy that Celtic end up earmarking for that role if Harry Kewell was to go, because I think that is something they may well try and get fans on side, because Scott Brown was such an inspirational captain for the team for so many years. So there's a few different things to really dissect when you're looking at what went wrong. Brendan Rodgers has to hold his hands up, I think, when you're looking at what he's had to work with in terms of not getting the best out of these players. There's absolutely no doubt about it. When we're looking, even at team selection, Johnny, there's an interesting ones there as well for me. And I'm going to touch on the defence. I think Connor's obviously went through the attack there in quite a bit of detail, but defensively is even more interesting to me, because I think coming out of that window, I think there was one thing we couldn't turn around and complain about, was the fact we did get the numbers in at centre back. There should have been enough cover there with the number of bodies we've brought in, and we did spend good money there as well. We've brought in Naroki and Lagerbielka. That's about £8-9 million between the two of them, that you're really looking at making an impact in the team. But it seems as if it's a guy that we've got on loan from Liverpool, no option to buy, most likely will go back to Liverpool. And after Sunday, I absolutely hope that is the case. I'll happily drive him to the airport because he was giving me Shane Duffy vibes, to be perfectly honest, at the weekend there. But what does this say about Celtic and what's going wrong when you've got two other centre-backs in the team, one who was actually getting games for Sweden already this season, that now cannot get into the first team? Celtic have already spent, as I say, £8-9 million on these players. And, this perhaps is an example of, well, we did spend money in certain positions, but the money we've spent seems to be extremely poor. It's like going back to the COVID season when we spent 10 million on Ayeti and Barkas. Has something gone wrong, Johnny, do you think, with recruitment as well? I'm not talking about necessarily the amount of money that the board have spent on players throughout the window, but I'm talking about the recruitment strategy in general, because under Postecoglou, there's no two ways about it. I think he had a lot more influence and say over it. I think now that summer window, I don't think was mainly Brendan's doing. I think he signed off on most of the players, but I don't think most of them were his ideas, albeit the one he brought in is probably arguably one of the worst of the bunch, which isn't saying much either. But in terms of the actual recruitment side of it, when you bring in two centre-backs, spending the best part of £10 million, one of them hasn't even played for the club yet, and granted, I know he's had injuries, and the other has just been totally never seen again since Carter Vickers got back to fitness. What does that say about Celtic and the recruitment strategy, and what needs to change on that front going into January?
Well, it says it's not very good, doesn't it? And what needs to change in it, you've just mentioned there on the coaching side, Brendan has to get his own men in to work with them at all levels, not just as a coach or an assistant, but people he trusts and recruiting. Having said that, he did go along with and want Lee Congerton in, and he was don't think he was what you would call a raving success either. But there's obviously something wrong. Somebody doesn't know what they're looking at, who they're looking for, or they're looking in their own markets. £10 million spent on two centre-halves that I think one of them got on the bench yesterday and the other one was probably sitting at home watching it on the telly. And who, by the way, on the little bits that I have seen of him, along with everybody else, has done nothing to make me think he should be playing. Lagerbielka, I think he's spent his time on the lager, to be fair. And Naroki, I've hardly seen anything of his games. So, because he's had so little game time, hasn't he? So he obviously picked up that injury. But I think Brendan needs to get his own men in. And one of the main men that he would have wanted to come in has obviously went to Spurs. That's, what's his name? Chris Davies.
Chris Davies, yeah, the assistant, yeah.
Brendan brought him up first time round. He wanted him this time round, but because for whatever reason it took a little bit longer to get Brendan in the door. Ange came in and nipped in front and took him to Spurs, and apparently I think I've seen in the papers that Swansea are now after him as well. But Brendan needs to get his own men in, and if we're going to talk about Brendan, as I said earlier on the programme, on the show, I said I wanted Brendan right from the start, first, second and third choice, but I didn't want this version of Brendan. I didn't want the Brendan who stood under can't believe I'm about to say this, under a traitor's hood, if you like, watching the bloody game yesterday in the piss and rain, and just, it reminded me a little bit of Steve McLaren all them years ago, standing under the umbrella just before he pumped from the England job, when he was, because he's just, you could see then he had no clue what to do to change things. And I hate to say it, looked a little bit like that yesterday with Brendan. He just didn't seem to know what he was going to do. We've got to get the real Brendan back, and he's got to make the decision. He's got to take control. It's like, we're not buying anybody you say in front of me. It's him I want. And if he doesn't get them, he wants to just piss off. Because why would he want to stay under? I can't understand why he come back. I really don't. It's really getting to me now. I think he left because he wasn't happy with the way things are working. You're not telling me they put exactly the same presentation in front of him at the various visits to his villa in Marbella, was it? Or whatever, got the holiday home, and thought, it was crap the last time. I think I'll come back and do it all over again. I can't believe he done that. You just don't do it. He must have been under the impression there was going to be changes, differences. We are going to improve things. We will do it, and we are going to make this push. And we just haven't made any push whatsoever. But what he needs to do is he needs to get his own men in the back room, and he needs to get his own men in the front. And obviously, one of the names that's now being looked at because of Harry Keogh's apparent upcoming move to Japan is obviously Scott Brown, as you've sort of alluded to in the start there, and I've got very mixed feelings about that one. Never ever seen him going into that side of football, and what he done down at Fleetwood didn't exactly set the heather on fire. So I don't know about that one either. Although he could well be, if it's Brendan who picks him, because Brendan obviously had a close working relationship with him first time round. If it's Brendan who picks him and says that's what I want, then fine. But if it turns out that and if this comes to pass, obviously, if it turns out it's because he's been foisted on Brendan because of that's what the board want, then that's not fine. It's got to be somebody that Brendan chooses. Otherwise, he'd be as well just going. And if he did go under those circumstances, who could blame him?
Yeah, I think there is definitely going to be more of an argument of it this time around if Brendan was to end up walking away if he doesn't get the backing corner that I think we all think he needs to actually get this back on track. I don't think anyone's going to be calling for him to go at this stage, but certainly if he doesn't get the men that he wants in January, I think Brendan Rodgers is smart enough to know he's then gambling even more so with his reputation going into the second half of the season, because not winning the league with Celtic completely crucifies him as a manager. There's not an awful lot of way back for him, in management. For me, if he ends up doing that, he's going to have to go seriously quite far down to get another job, which, he won't want to do, and it will do a lot of reputational damage there for him as well. It's interesting that Johnny's obviously picked up the same as me, that Scott Brown was in attendance, at Rugby Park. It does seem like very much a Celtic board move, bringing in somebody like Scott Brown to assist Brendan Rodgers. I mean, again, I'm kind of like Johnny. I'd have mixed feelings on it. I think Brown could certainly give the players a rocket up the arse when they needed one. I think he would be perhaps more of the motivational type manager, and that might allow Brendan to kind of focus more on the tactical side, while Brown, make sure that the players' mentality going into these games is correct and on point, because we seem to be finding that there's more than just one thing wrong with what we're doing at the moment. It's not just a combination of tactics. We've touched upon it earlier when we went behind, or when we really started, the command started getting in our faces in that second half. The players didn't have answers. The mentality wasn't right. And, we've got massive games coming up over the next couple of weeks, none more so than the derby at Celtic Park at the end of the month. where Rangers are going to try and get in our faces, and they're going to try and make things as uncomfortable as they possibly can, and they will try and make it physical, and they will try and bully us like what Kilmarnock done. Celtic do seem a little bit lightweight for me in that area, and it was something I always thought, even under Ange Postecoglou, they could have done with more power in the middle of the park. So I'm kind of split when it comes to somebody like Scott Brown coming in, because I look at Brown and think there is definitely attributes of him that I quite like to bring him into the coaching side of things. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to fix all the problems, but it's something we can do in the short term, because we can't do anything until January with the players that we have. But there's another part of me that does think, and the cynical side of me thinks, Scott Brown coming in is just Celtic board reverting back to type, similar to what they've done by bringing Lenny in the past as, you know, the manager again, and, you know, hoping that the fans buy in based on what somebody's done for us on the pitch as a player, and hoping that transfers over to them as a coach. But I mean, in terms of, you know, this season, Brendan Rodgers' reputation, you know, and obviously the possibility of Scott Brown being added to the mix, is that something that you would welcome Brown joining the coaching staff, or do you think Brendan might have a better option that he's already identified?
I mean, I could see the couple wee benefits they might bring, but then it could do just as much damage, or if not more. He'd get the players fired up. Bring back that, you know, kind of captain winning mentality, get stuck into these Hun bastards, blah, 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 all of that. And that's all well and good, but he went to Fleetwood, he didn't do great, you know, and if that's what he is when he's in charge, or when he's in the coaching staff area, then it doesn't, you know, it doesn't ring you with confidence, does it? I mean, it's gave me similar vibes to what happened with Sean Maloney. He obviously, you know, took the job at Hibs and was by all accounts a failure. And he was working with the Belgian international team, who were, I think at the time, were the number one rated nation in the world. Number one rated nation in the world. And Sean Maloney was part of the coaching staff for that. And he was a trusted member of the coaching staff who was thought highly of. He went to Hibs, shat the bed.
I think, to be fair, when it comes to being the coach at one of the best teams, international teams in the world, and coaching that level of player, to then try and bring what you want, what you've been able to achieve with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne and all the likes of that, to then bring it to Easter Road and try and achieve the same thing and get the same, anywhere near the same level of standard with them, with the likes of, what's his name, the winger at Hibs, I can never remember his name, went up to Saudi and came back, the Australian lad,
Martin Boyle.
Yeah. I mean, you're just not going to get. I think Maloney got a raw deal there, if I'm being fair.
I don't think he was given enough time, and I mean, they probably would have maybe done a bit better if he actually did stick with him. But you know, that's all if spots and maybes. But at the end of the day, he didn't have a great spell there.
No, he didn't. The record books won't say he was a coach with that and that. He was just shit at Hibs. No, and there's no getting away. The results were bad, but I don't think he got enough time. And I think that was a case of bad judgment from Maloney, because he should never have gone anywhere near that job.
But then if he did the same thing with Bruni and he came in and the results didn't pick up, would we give him the time, or would we want rid of him? I think, you know.
Oh, I'm not talking about being a manager, though. I don't want Bruni as manager. I don't think he is a manager.
No, that's the next stage, though, isn't it? That's the next stage, though, isn't it? If they end up going for somebody like Scott Brown, that is the succession planning. And if you ask me, if you put your cynical hats on and know the board and how they like to do business.
There's no two ways about that, but we could say the same thing about Kennedy. And he's been hanging around for God knows how many years, and we all thought, well, that's the succession plan there. It hasn't quite turned out that way, thankfully. But I just don't think... Coach, possibly... I don't think he's a manager. I don't. I'm not going to sit here and say I can tell a manager when I see one, but I do have a few players that I've looked at in the past that not management material. Been proven right with three of them so far. Henrik Larsson, A lot of talk about getting Henrik back as manager, but no way. Don't want him doing that because I don't think he's a manager. He'll spoil everything. My best mate
At the end of the day,
Steven Gerrard to be the next Liverpool manager, and I'd said to him years ago, he's not a manager. He won't cut it. And Lampard as well. They're not managers. They might do coaching, but they're not managers. And Scott Brown, for me, is in the same level. We need to get away from ex-Celtic players as managers. We used to go down that road all the time, and it worked to a point. But yeah, so that would be my theory. If he did come back as a coach, I could live with that if he's Brendan's choice and not Mr. Lawwell's choice, because he would end up getting the job in the showers at some point.
If the Brendan lost the Scottish Cup final or something like that and was out of a job or something ridiculous, the way this season's going, nothing could be off the cards the way it's going at the moment. I'm going to finish with something else away from Scott Brown and looking forward now, Johnny, to the game that's coming up on Wednesday. I actually did have a ticket for Wednesday. I've decided not to bother taking it up. I think Sunday put me off completely if I was even going to bother to begin with, because the European campaign has been about as underwhelming as it gets for me. But, people are obviously talking about opportunities now to try and make their voices heard and how you go about getting the board to listen and take stock. We've had a fair dissection, I think, of the players. We've had a fair dissection of what the manager has got wrong. There's absolutely no two ways about it. The board have also been culpable for what's happened thus far this season in a number of ways, starting with the transfer window in the summer. And that's kind of, continued on into their disagreements with the Green Brigade, which for me, they need to get sorted out before the derby rolls around at the end of the month. You want the Green Brigade back in. You want that atmosphere as red hot as possible to give yourself as big an advantage as you can. But when we're looking at a game like Wednesday against Feyenoord, it's a complete dead rubber. It's not what the situation we expected to be in, if we're being honest. When this group was drawn, we thought going into this last game, we would have had at least a fighting chance at third, or I certainly did when the group was drawn, if not potentially even better than that. It's been another underwhelming, as I say, European campaign. And with fans now getting extremely frustrated with where the club is at, Johnny, does this game represent an opportunity for protests to be made? Does this game represent an opportunity for fans to either make their voices heard through, banners, or indeed by not showing up and leaving the stadium empty?
It obviously presents an opportunity, and there may be some form of protest. Obviously, and I heard Phil talking on one of the shows over the weekend that whether he goes or not, financially makes no difference to Celtic because the money already went out of his bank account last month for the game. And I'm sure, well, I don't know about Mark's situation because we know Mark's not the biggest fan of Champions League.
Oh no, I took his ticket up. That's where my tickets came from.
Oh, was it? Right, okay, yeah. Right, so yeah, but so it's like there'll be no financial hit on Celtic if that happens. But it's like Russell has been saying, just the very fact that if there was a game Champions League game getting shown around Europe on the highlights packages, because I'm quite sure somebody in Spain's not really going to be that bothered about watching Celtic Feyenoord dead rubber game, but they might see it on the highlights package. And like Russell says, if they see nothing but empty stadiums, it's not going to look too good for us as a football club. It's not going to do any massive damage, but it's not going to look too clever. Personally, I don't know if I'll watch it. I might turn the channel and watch it. I didn't even watch the Lazio game. Didn't even try and get a link or anything on it. Was actually more interested in cooking the Indian meal I was cooking that night and watching the game because it was the early kickoff. That one, wasn't it? It was 5:45 kickoff.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I was busy cooking some Indian food in the kitchen. I thought, I'm not even bothered. I'll put the live score app on the phone and get the updates for any goals that we might get. That's as far as my interest went. If I had a ticket for the game, would I think about throwing good money after bad and spending money on fuel or buses or whatever to get there? Probably not, especially if it's, I don't know what the forecast is like for you boys up there tomorrow night, but probably not the best.
No, so, it'd be pretty nippy, I would imagine. It'd be pretty nippy, but yeah.
The problem is, yeah, there's the opportunity, particularly with the Green Brigade situation bubbling in the background. Some people might want to show bit of support for them as much as against the board. So yeah, there's the opportunity. They'll probably go and win on bloody Wednesday night when it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think there's certainly going to be some form of protest, Connor, when we look ahead to Wednesday, because the game is, in the grand scheme of things, totally irrelevant. And we've ended up getting ourselves into a position yet again in Europe where we can't make it last for the 6 games. We cannot keep ourselves in contention throughout the group phases. And for the second year in a row, it's been a group where there has been teams in that group that Celtic should be able to compete with if, the club is run the way that we want it to be run and we believe can be run. But at the moment, it just seems as if something's not quite right. Protests, I think, are likely. I'll be interested to see exactly what we decide to do on the pitch, because off the pitch, there's question marks as to how we're going to deal with this, and how much of a message people are going to try and send to the board. On the pitch, though, Connor, there's going to be question marks as well, I think, not in terms of, whatever happens with the result. I don't think it has any real material impact on anything whatsoever, to be honest with you. But it does present an opportunity again for Brendan Rodgers and Celtic to try and work out what is actually going to work for this team over the next few weeks. And it's almost like a training match in some ways. But if it ends up serving a purpose in terms of getting Celtic into a place where they actually find out how to go about winning games again and how to get those sort of performance levels and trying something different, then it may prove to be a worthwhile exercise. If you were looking at this one, how would you kind of go about it if you were in, Brendan's position? Is this a game where you still continue to play your better players, even though it's a dead rubber? Or is this a game where you try and find players that potentially could make the break, through in the youth setup, or players that have been cast to one side, like a Narocki type, and find out what they're all about? How does Celtic go about approaching this game for you?
I'm sorry to disappoint you, mate, but I'm going to give you a short answer. I couldn't give a fuck about the Wednesday. I could not give one single fuck about that game, about who we play, about how we play, even if we win. Does not matter an ounce to me. And I'm calling for anybody who's got a ticket for that game not to go. Don't watch it. I know they've got the money already, but they cannot ignore.
Do you think that would make much of a difference?
They can't ignore thousands of people not turning up. That would make national news, headline news, the papers, everybody be talking about it. This image here, right? I know you can't really see it that well, but that is the fucking image of the same with Peter Lowell. That's going about Twitter now. Get that fucking shared everywhere on Twitter if you've got it.
It's the propaganda we've now got, Johnny. I didn't realise we were getting propaganda.
Get it shared on every Celtic social media post you can get your hands on. Get it shared far and wide. Fucking, you want rid of these bastards that are ruining this club, and get ones with fucking Desmond and Mark Lawwell and all of them. Fucking Michael Nicholson, get ones made to all of them. Do not turn up to that fucking game, right? Don't you not even watch it? I could not care, right? Boycott it. That is the only way we will get any kind of reaction or any sort of backing for this team, as if we show them that we're not going to stand for this anymore. We're an embarrassment in Europe, and we're now going to fucking slowly start becoming an embarrassment in the league if this doesn't stop, because we're that bad right now. Honestly, just do it. Honestly, I'm going to get my wee green beret in the back of my cupboard now and wave my flags in that and get the Sharks out, because this is just this is the only way we're actually going to do anything, is by not turning up to this game and showing them that we're not going to stand for it. As far as the actual game goes, I'll actually answer your question now. Honestly, I would just play all the players who don't get any much game time, and just do not risk any more further injuries. Do not risk any more, further complications down the line, because at the current stage, we need all we can get, really, going into a game against Hearts at the weekend, who, by all accounts, have been pretty fucking poor this season, and yet we are quaking in our fucking boots. We'll probably beat Hearts, by the way, this weekend, and we'll probably beat them convincingly, and then we'll be like, oh, what were we worried about? Oh, wasn't it that bad? It was just one slip up. And that's what the board love. And even if we beat Feyenoord, if we beat Feyenoord and we beat Hearts, we'll be like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. And fucking pride, mate. What pride? What for 3 points, Chris M? But and a couple of £1 million in the bank. What pride is that? There's no pride about still finishing last in a fucking Champions League group for the umpteenth time in years. And for what? I wasn't proud that we got that result against Real Betis a couple of seasons ago when we finished bottom of the Europa League group. Doesn't matter. It does not matter. I would be proud if the team actually went out and showed a bit of grit and heart and, were really, really, really unlucky not to get a good result against a good team in Europe. We can't beat teams like fucking Shakhtar who were in the middle of a fucking war, who weren't even playing in their home stadium in the Champions League. We couldn't beat them. Can't beat Feyenoord. We can't beat, Atletico Madrid. We can't even, that's fair enough, whatever. We can't beat Lazio, who were stinking at Celtic Park, who got a last-minute winner against us. Honestly, people are so fucking easily swayed by this club, and it's because we love it. See if you're a happy clapper and it's like, oh, we're fine, we're still top of the league, it's fine. Oh, if we get a win against Feyenoord, that's good, that shows we're all right in Europe. No. You are the board's wet dream, if that's your attitude towards this. And it's people like that who are, just what the board want to fill up the stands every single game, rather than people like the Green Brigade, like us, like some of the other pods who are calling out this shit and who have been doing it for ages. It's just get rid of these fuckers, man. Fucking get rid of them. Honestly. Get them strung up along the fucking Celtic way by their fucking ankles. It's not good enough anymore. We have been absolutely fucked by these people for so long, and we deserve better as a club. And marginal success against the Huns and against shit fucking teams in the SPFL does not make up for the amount of money we pump into this club, for the amount of money that they're bringing over here, for them to get a new fucking heated driveway put in, or to buy a new, vacation home in Hawaii and take their mistresses on yachts out in Cuba. I'm sorry.
I think we need to be a bit careful what you're saying there, Connor. But so I take it you're not going to the game at all on Wednesday, no?
No, and I'll not be watching it either.
I mean, yes. I mean, it was certainly an impassioned speech there. I think my fellows had enough of us looking to get things wrapped up in the background, but we will close it on Connor's infamous rants. He is very impassioned by the whole thing, and yes, obviously got his propaganda in mind for Wednesday. As I say, hopefully the performance is better. It needs to be better than what it was at the weekend. There's going to be question marks regardless of what happens, I think, for the next few days, and I don't think a result against Feyenoord is going to change much. The full eyes of the support are now going to be, turned directly towards the board and the manager if they weren't already there, and the only way to change that is by getting results. Obviously, coming up on the bus, I think this week, I'm not sure if my brother and Terry, Connor, are even going to be doing a post-match pish or not. I'm sure you're probably going to tell them to boycott that as well, but they might be back, they might not for that one. I've not double-checked on that front. The TNF will definitely be back on Thursday, and I'm sure Phil will be running the Friday night feeling as well before we go into our crunch game against Hearts at the weekend. But and that really wraps up the Monday Club for tonight. And if we are doing it, and then what we need to be paying attention to, guys, is keeping our eyes on this board, because at the moment the clock is ticking and Celtic aren't looking so hot. Good night.